Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our guest speaker tonight here in Autonomy. We have Viviane Vives. Did I say that correctly?
Vives.
Vives. I butchered it. Should have
There's
asked.
you and the other 300 million Americans. It's okay.
Viviane came into Autonomy and made herself known. It was wonderful to get to know her, and she just had such an amazing story that I wanted to bring her on as a guest speaker. She has her own Discord server called the Self-Directed Education and Unschooling, and she has just been collecting resources and experience with raising her son after pulling him out of school, and then now he's off to college. And we're about to hear that story. Viviane, thanks so much for making the time for sharing this with us. I'm really excited to hear about your experience.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting. I started this server because I wanted to help other parents. And the reason I wanted to help is because when you try something so different, you get really stressed out. And I kind of wanted to take out of the equation that because it is really a fabulous experience and with a fabulous outcome, it's totally the right thing in my opinion, but I didn't know that at all. Like I had no idea. I was completely blind, you know. I mean, so I'll go into the story right away. So we you know, we can see how I came to this. And so my own education, I had the opposite. I had the most structured, you know, nuns, like the top classical nun education for 16 years. I even went to Jesuits, which no girl went. It was the first Jesuit class in Barcelona, where I grew up. Crazy shit. I mean, like heavy duty Latin, Greek, you know, everything you can come under the sun we studied, you know, music, art, which, I mean, there's parts of it that was amazing because the education was amazing, but talk about rigid. So I got expelled 5 times. I was always getting in trouble. They always took me back, you know. But I just butted with the like, you know, like I like studying a lot. I like knowledge, but it was, you know, I had really, really good memory. You know, I was into everything. I could read and write really young. Like I learned to read and write when I was like 3 years old. They would used to parade me in the church. They made me read the Bible, and you know, they put me in a pew, and you know, I had photographic memory. I had total recall. I spoke languages and nobody knew why. I mean, my family already spoke languages because I had a French mother and my father is Catalan, and although it was forbidden Catalan, but my grandfather was Italian, my grandmother was Belgian. So I was exposed to languages, but I also had a facility for it. I spoke English, nobody knew why. They kept saying, "Yeah, your father's American, your father's," like, no, my father's Catalan, my mother's French. And so they couldn't explain it, and they kept kicking me out of the class because I kept correcting the teacher, and just, you know, just weird. I was a weird kid, but I liked studying. But the structure, like, okay, we have to do this, and every day the same, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go rescue a cat. I wanted to go explore something else. You know, I always wanted to be out, and that was not done. But I was really lucky that my mother, and this is what you were saying before. She said, okay, so these nuns, she hated them with a vengeance. But my father, you know, wanted that school because that's what was done. And she said, look, these nuns, if they tell you, they tell you something that you like and you think it's okay and makes you feel good, that's fine. But if you don't like it, don't listen. Just ignore them. You know, it's not important. Just ignore. And then if they hurt you or something, come to me. You know, so she was, so, you know, they were really mad at her because she was always defending me, and I did exactly what she told me. So I took, you know, you were talking about your child later on going to college and if they know what they're doing. Well, I was very little. I did what my mother told me, right? I said, okay, perfect. So this I like, this I don't like, fuck it, right? And so that is one of the first, you know, things that I realized that, you know, you don't have to do what you're told. You can be free. You can be whatever you want, right? Okay. So, but then you forget you did the whole thing. You get immersed in the system. And when I had a child, I took him to the same thing. because I wanted him to have all the advantages of a good education, and that's what he's done, and all this shit, right? I hadn't thought much about it. And so I took him to a prep school, and it was hell to get in, and it was hell for us. We were vetted. He was vetted. It's like, oh, we can figure him out, because we didn't teach him anything. We just let him be. He was the most amazing child. He was into everything, alive, completely awake, bright-eyed, looking at everything. And also we had kept him, I nursed him for 2.5 years. He wouldn't leave my side. We worked for ourselves. We had our own business. So we took him everywhere. He came to all the meetings. He was right there. I mean, I did all the things that now are all the rage. Well, this was 22 years ago, right? So it was like, these people were looking at me. It's like, you're nursing your child in the meeting. It's like, well, fuck you, and he was there with with an architecture studio and film studio, interdisciplinary. So he was there with everybody in everybody's lap. I was into really making him, be social, and he really is. He's really gregarious now, right? So all these interesting, creative people, and he was a part of it. I have videos of him just pointing at the models, and and he's giving his opinion, and he's like this little toddler, And I never took him. So I had this mania, and my mother had that mania too, that I would not let my child with anybody until he could speak and tell me what had happened to him. So because this is one thing I've always known, because I remember it, that fear is something that is learned. I don't believe we were born with fear. I believe that it kind of enters us. And I remember, the moment that fear entered me. And it was in that school when I was 6 years old, and my best friend was telling me a story about vampires, of a movie that he had seen. And I remember this feeling of this thing entering me, right? And that was fear. In a way, it never leaves, or it takes a long time to leave. And so I remember this. And also my mother had done the same thing with me. So you never left your child until he could speak and tell you that this had happened to me, the person did this to me, or, like you had to be able to speak. And then, so for 2.5 years or something, he only was with me and my husband, and my in-laws were mortified. I mean, it's like, I was like, sorry, that's the way it's going to be, right? She's only going to be with us. So I had all these weird things already, right? But besides that, not much. And the fact that, we never left him at a daycare until he finally wanted to go. Like when he was 2 or 3 years old, he wanted to be with other kids, and we went to 2 or 3 because, you leave your child there and you come get him, and he's kind of like out of it. I'm like, And so finally, we found one that it was like all inclusive, that had, people with Down syndrome, it's all kinds of people. It was like, they taught him to be good people, it was the Open Door, very special place. That worked, right? So, but so we took him to this prep school, and, it smelled like my school. It smelled like the good stuff of my school, all the books and stuff. And he was all excited. He loved his teacher and everything. And so after 1.5 or 2 years, I turned to MJ, and I've been observing this for like a year. And I said, look, MJ's my husband. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? And it's like, the kids are weird, right? I'm like, right? These are not the same kids we gave them, right? Like what's happening to all? So we observed that all the children were changing. And I know they tell you, that they're 7-year-old, that they're going to change, blah, blah, blah. They have all, but that wasn't it. It was, I didn't buy the excuse. Like, it's like, and then I really started observing what was going in that school, really looking at the curriculum, looking at what they were doing, how everything functioned, because, he was getting angry. The other kids were getting detached. Other kids were getting vindicative. It was market. I mean, and I think every parent observes this.
They're all coping. They're all coping in their own way.
Yes. Something's wrong. Something's fundamentally wrong, because the children we give them, they are this brilliant, full of life, exuberant, logos, genius. They're genius. They're little geniuses, and they're full of it. They're full of life, right? And actually so much that when I took him, when he was 5, to this school, and we had this meeting with him and everything, I said to the lady, to the principal, I said, look, I do want a good education. I love knowledge. I'm a writer, we're professionals, all that. But I said, you see this light in his eyes? And I actually did say that to her. And I said, that's what I care the most about. I want that to stay. So I was concerned about him staying in touch with him, right? And I told him the same thing that my mother told me. I mean, that fierce protection of your heart and your freedom, right? And your sense of self, right? And my mother had an innate sense of freedom in her. Like, she was wild. My mother was brought up in a forest, and she was a wild person. I mean, she's very strong, you know, very intuitive. You know, everybody went to her to help, you know, them psychologically. It was like almost, you know, like a seer, right? And I have that too. And so, you know, I was wanting to protect the same thing that had been protected for me, but even more, right? My mother didn't fight this. My mother adapted. Like, she would play with the system. Like, she would understand it and she would play, but then she would say, you know what I'm saying? She would be very diplomatic. I've never been like this. I don't have a diplomatic bone in my body. Like, I'm all in your face, kind of super direct, super, you know. And my mother was like, why can't you like be more diplomatic? I said, why should I be more diplomatic? This is bullshit. And period. You know, it should be obvious. Of course it isn't, right? But so I was always like that, right? And so with the school, you know, and then I started looking at things. I said, okay, so I looked at the curriculum. I said, where did the philosophy go? You know, why are these kids in this basement repeating the same thing over and over and over? Because they were like badgering him, like, and he didn't want to do it. And I said, if you wait, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, he's going to do that in 5 minutes. So now you want him to be in this basement doing this over and over when he doesn't want to do it. And you're going to make him, instead of being outside playing, because why? Wait. And then he'll do it. And boom, that I knew, right? It was obvious to me. Like, some things were easy for him, some weren't. And some things were the time, some things wasn't the time. He wasn't ready. Then I started learning. Then I started studying. And now I'm going to start sharing the screen, because that's one of the things that I would like people to see, because it was a very important book. So it was, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So this book, this is a guy here in the University of Texas. So I found this book, and this whole book, it's about how children really learn. Like, you know, do they really learn by, you know, small measurable increments in equal, you know, in blocks, you know, or it, you know, that's how we're teaching them, right? So you teach them something. And that's one thing that annoyed me to no end when I went to school. Like, they would teach you something. First of all, they would repeat it like 50,000 times. It's like, okay, I got it like the first time, and now I have to sit here all this time listening it again and again and again and again. And then they would come back next year and they would repeat it again with maybe a little bit more information. And then again on the third year with a little bit more information. It's like, no, I mean, just, you know, when you're ready to learn it, you learn it, right? And that's what I was observing that was happening with Killian. Like, some things, you know, he was ready and he was got it in one moment, and then they repeated and repeated and repeated. He never wanted to do homework, you know, all that. And so I started questioning everything, and I never had done that. You know, it didn't occur to me, but it was kind of to protect him. So I really dove into it, and I read some books, and then I landed on this book. And this book is written to talk about mostly about this school called Sri Anananda Memorial School, which is a school that was started in Austin by a social worker that went to India and took her son with her. And when they got there, they liked the school so much that she asked permission to open one in Austin. So the principles of the school is that the children are wanting to learn innately, that you don't have to make them learn, that they know how they need to learn and when they need to learn and how they need to learn, that mostly they learn from each other, and also that they need to be choosing their teacher. And then they need to develop a relationship of trust with their teacher and keep the teacher over the years. And then things are offered to the children, but they're not enforced. And the core of the education is the unconditional respect of the child and and consideration of the child. And that took me to another thing that I realized we're doing, because observing these children in this other school, it started to look to me like we were betraying the children. And why do I say that? I say that a lot. It's like, you know, we betray our children. And if you think about it, we totally do that. Like we don't listen to them. We don't care what they have to say. They don't have any say in their own fucking education, which is bullshit. We treat them like they're demented, and which is not true. It's proven that children actually, when they're small, they test a genius level, most of them. It's when they go to school that they become stupid. Honestly, they lose IQ points. They lose themselves. They forget themselves. They lose the connection with their own hearts. We are doing that. And today I wrote something, you know, thinking about this talk, that, you know, we all know there's something seriously wrong the way we live. We all know this. But the ones that know it the most is the children. They know, I mean, they don't know it in their minds. They know in their beingness. They know in the way they are. But the children are so loving, and they love us so much that they trust us more than they trust themselves. But it's out of love. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they don't know. It's not because they need somebody to lead them. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's out of love. They love us so much that they want to please us. And if we say something like, sure, okay, let's go. We'll do that. Okay, you say it's like this. Okay, I want to do it like this, mama. Right? Even though he might be wanting to be doing other thing. It's out of love. It's out of devotion, right? So that same love and devotion they have for learning. It's innate. They couldn't even survive if they didn't do that. They could not survive if their innate desire of learning, right? So the schooling we do, and I will go to another book right here, and you probably know this book, right? Okay. So this book is called The Leipzig Connection, The Systematic Destruction of American Education. This book was written in the 70s, I think, late 70s, and explains how the children were destroyed in purpose, how they're destroying our children on purpose. It's deliberate. And this book proves it. It's a tiny little book and explains the names, the locations, who did it, how they did it, exactly how it worked. And it was this Rockefeller Foundation guys that hired these German professors that basically were experimenting with the children. And they were experimenting to do something very specific, which was to make them obedient. And that's this whole book. And it's not a theory. It's a complete description, blow by blow, of how it actually worked, when they changed the curriculums, how they changed them, why, and to what. And these are the guys. These are the guys that did it. I mean, these are the names and phone numbers and everything. I mean, look at this: experimental psychology at work, the backdrop for today's educational method. So when you study education at school, it's based on these guys. But these guys were hired not to make children learn better. These guys were hired to make their children worse. Systematically. I mean, it's to the T. It's not, people think these things are casual and not intentional. I don't think it's true. I think there is plenty of evidence that is deliberate. And this book, which is, I think it's public domain by now. And if not, I mean, you can't find it. I have the PDF in there. I did ask permission to Gary Borick to distribute his book. He had it for free on his website. And so he never answered me. He's retired now, but he had it for free on his own page. So, I assume it's okay.
What was the goal of the way that they were schooling kids?
Oh, this is incredible. So those two books are like the night and day, right? So one book is all about how to, put and shape the children and unconditionally support them and believe them. And so everything is brought to them only if they ask. For example, in the KPM approach, it's the opposite of the regular approach, right? Is that, for example, let's say, first of all, they follow their bliss. There's chaos. There is no classroom. There is no, I mean, there are classrooms and there are things that are offered and there's math books and there's classes, but they don't have to attend. So if they decide that they want to, and usually what they do is they go play in the sand and they are with each other. Here, I'll bring up something else. Actually, maybe in here in the server. I'll show you how a day in their life of these kids goes, like right here. That's what starts to happen. It's like they pick one teacher. They usually go to this teacher if they need something, or they're wanting to find out about something that they need for whatever they're planning, right? So the teachers are a resource. The teachers are there to serve the children, and there's one teacher per 5 children. That's it.
Wow.
And so the year starts with a dumping of the sand, and so they dump this big pile of sand, and everybody runs to it. And see, this is the typical thing what they do, like. They get into groups and that's my son, was usually leader, his personality, right? And then they get together and they have a mission, like they probably were hunting for, we put gems and stones and rocks in the sand, or they would create a hovercraft, or who knows, I mean, it could be whatever, right? And the teachers are right there if they're wanted, right? And then they bring approaches. So the approach is, for example, let's say they're up in a tree and they're talking about aerodynamics, just because they're asking questions and they're answering, and the teacher starts talking about but this, or gravity or whatever. And then while the child is asking questions, or the children are asking questions, they continue. The minute the child stops, they stop. They move on to another thing. It's not ADD. That's exactly how children learn. They'll pick up later. They'll remember exactly where they left off. So what happens when you learn something like that? You never forget it, because it's experiential. It's in your body. It's in your memory. It's a part of you. It's part of your world. It's real. It's absolutely 100% real.
It fit what you were interested in, right? It wasn't.
You were in that world. You're not learning. You're experiencing. And while you experience, you ask questions and you learn, like we do. Like that's how children learn. And they don't learn in small measurable increments that you can test them on. That's bullshit. They learn in aha moments. And I'll get into this in a minute, but I want to say something before I forget. So when they get to be teenagers, there's no rebellion. I never saw a rebellious teen. One of the things that convinced me to put Killian in this other alternative environment was that I went at lunchtime. And when you went to the lunchtime at the Kirby Hall School, or the prep school, it was mayhem. It was disgusting. Everybody was like hysterical, because they had only that hour, half hour, and they were nuts. These kids, they did what they wanted the whole fucking day for years. So there was never that. Unless they were playing some game where you get hysterical, or do a play, or I don't know, there never was that. There was just this placid, very poised kind of, kids in their own center, right? I mean, they were centered. They weren't outside of their center. And so you went to lunch, and the kids were talking to each other and eating. Those were teenagers. There was no teenage hysterics at all. This girl here, Natalie, she was, I think, 14, and she entered because she wanted to. She entered some competition in Austin about a green project. It was run by Whole Foods, and she won it. And so when they gave her the prize, they said, we'd like to hire you. She's like, yeah, but I'm only 14. I'm still, and they were like, what? They were freaking out, So this is literally an unschooled child, right? So the things that they can do, it's amazing. You will never cease to be amazed. All you have to do is get out of the way, and let them. I'll show you another thing. And that's
they weren't mistrustful of adults. They knew how to interact with adults.
Not mistrustful at all, because adults would never betraying them. They were always unconditionally supporting them, never lying, and always just ready to help them to do what they wanted to do. So my son, since he was very small, he's never been awkward. He's a bit of a geek. My son's studying physics now, so he's a brain, right? And I'll go into that. I mean, it's super interesting. I mean, I'm so dumbfounded because I'll tell you that story. But anyway, where was I with that? I lost my train of thought.
Girl, she wanted to work.
No, she did that. Oh, so they never. Well, anyway, I'll just keep going. No, I wanted to bring something up. Hold on. It was. Oh yes, I remember. Sugata Mitra, because this falls directly into what we were talking about. To get the adults getting out of the way and just bringing very little. This guy goes even further than the KPM approach. This guy, Sugata Mitra, if you don't know him, he is fascinating. So he has this research that is called the hole in the wall. And then he has this other research that's called the grandmother, or I call it the grandmother effect. I think he calls it something different. But the hole in the wall, so this guy is a physicist, by the way, but he does education. He researches education for a long time. I don't know how he did that transition, but it's interesting because his mind functions in a different way, right? So he does things in a different way. And so he took the worst slum in India, in New Delhi, and got a wall and put a computer in that wall, an interactive computer that you could touch. This is years ago. These are the outcast children. They don't have anybody. They don't have parents. They don't have money. They don't go to school. Nothing. Okay. All he did was put this hole in the wall with that computer in it. And he monitored it. These children, by I don't know how long, ended up learning languages, learning math, learning how to read, learning how to write. They learned everything. They learned things that were unbelievable. And he was observing how they were, and they taught themselves the computer. He didn't give them anything. He just gave them the computer. That's it. And they would all pile up in front of that computer, and it's like, okay, you do that. And so then immediately, so he calls it the at the edge of chaos. So what happens? So chaos ensues, right? In which it happened a lot in Sri Ramananda, chaotic. But then the chaos kind of organizes itself, and at the edge of chaos is where all the magic happens. So what happens is immediately the children start organizing themselves, naturally organizing themselves, and decides who can do what better. Which, if you think about it, is how we should be all functioning, right? Who can do what better and get out of the way, right? So so the guy that can figure out one thing figures it out and then teaches everybody else. And then another guy or girl can learn that and then teaches everybody else. Then they teach each other. Then they can't figure something out and they get together and they fucking figure it out. They just figure it out. So his method, and then he's taken that to the self-directed learning. He got $1 million, or I don't know how much money. No, it was more than that. Maybe it was 10 million from TED. And he invested it all into doing this self-directed learning environments. And so to keep his research. And he would get, towns that they were lost in the world there. And so what he does is he says, look, get the children and then pose them a very difficult problem, something really difficult. And then make it hard for them. Don't give them too many advantages. Just don't make it too easy. And then get out of the way. Just get out of the way. And then that thing that I'm telling you about where it happens at the edge of chaos, they figure it out. Children learn from each other better than from anybody. And also, like in Sri Ramananda, all the ages were mixed. There were no grades. And that, I think, advanced those children. Well, I'll tell you more later. Okay. So another thing this guy discovered, I adore this guy. I think his research is amazing. Another thing he discovered is that another thing that improved the learning of the children by a lot is to put a grandmother or a grandfather figure in the classroom, even if it's a Zoom. So he put a screen in Skype or whatever, and at eye level, not high, but at this level, and it would be a grandmother, and all grandmother would do is say, "Oh, that is so wonderful. Oh, you did that so well." But meaning it. You know how grandmothers are. It's like, yeah, I'm really impressed with that. this is beautiful. Let me see again. So the children, again, same thing, right? So the grandmother would be there knitting or whatever the fuck and cooking, whatever, right? And the children eventually go there, like, look, grandma, or look, Mary, you know, look at that. Oh, she's like, oh my God, that is
proud
so
of what they've done.
Yeah. And that, I mean, the effect of that, it's staggering. More than the best teacher you can possibly have. Because it's kind of like a point of reference.
Yeah.
You know? And it's a heart thing. So it's like a magnetic kind of, you know, assurance. Everything's okay. So it takes the fear out of the way. It's protection, you know. And that was very similar with KPM approach, right? It's unconditional respect, unconditional love, unconditional confidence in the child, trust. And so when you took a child out of, you know, a learning environment, a traditional learning environment, and brought it to KPM approach, to Sri Ramananda, you know, I'll tell you the difference between these two principles. So the principle of the old school, you know, when we told her that we were going to take Kilian out and put him in Sri Ramananda, it's like, oh my God, they don't even read or write there. It's awful. You know, it's like, what are you doing? Oh yeah, I know. And so she said, well, you know, and you're letting him get away with it. I said, that lady is exactly what I'm doing. Exactly. Yes, I'm letting him get away with it. That's right. I mean, she was, and you are letting him get away with it. This is a true story. And so when we went to Sri Ramananda, the principal there said, look, don't worry. You know, she told us the same story that I'm telling you and everybody, you know, of how she took her son out of the system and put him in the KPM approach. And the child ended up being this very successful, I think it was a historian or something. And so when you go to a KPM, and then she said, you know, and when the children come, they're so pissed off. They're so angry. It's like, why are they angry? Because, and this is for the parents that are taking them out of a school late, right? And that's fine. What will happen is they're going to get pissed off for a year or more. Like they're, you know, why are they pissed off? Because they went against all their instincts, everything they wanted to please you and to please the teachers. And they tried so hard and did all the homework and did so well. And they applied themselves. And now that's worth nothing. You know, all this effort is worth nothing, which it isn't, by the way. It's worth nothing. It just isn't. That's not how it works.
Well, and they were doing it for others, not for themselves. So
well, that's exactly the point. Yeah. And that's exactly my concern. Well, the light in the eyes of my son and that you know, that shine, that zest for life, that's connected to his heart, and it's connected to his connection to his own heart. What that does is severs your heart from you and puts you all in the mind, which is bullshit. The mind is a minor attachment. The mind is good to decide, okay, we're going to meet at 8 o'clock, and then I have to put my shirt on, and I have to make sure my hair is clean. And, you know, that's the mind. The true knowledge and the true brilliance, it's aha. It comes from your whole being. It comes from the universe. It comes from the universal mind. It comes from magical places. It comes from each other. It's magnetic. It's electric. It has nothing to do with the mind. The mind is a little attachment. It really, any freaking genius in this entire history of discoveries in this planet, it will tell you it came to them in a dream. It came today in the shower, by water. So when a child is up in a tree or by the stream or with a group and they're, you know, flowing and following their bliss, they're in full knowledge and they're in full learning mode. That's the true learning and the true development, the true evolution. Okay, so going to this aha moments thing, I'm gonna cut to this notes that I was looking at. I was just reading this today. I asked Kilian, what was the most important part about his going to Sri? And he immediately said, the freedom. When I asked him what he meant, he didn't say to do what you want, but to learn what you want. I mean, think about that. That is huge. It's not the freedom to just do what you want. It's to learn what you want. Like, let's say you're itching to learn this and they're trying to teach you that, right? I found that interesting because I didn't prompt him and because it fit right into the research. I asked him, were you worried that you were not going to learn important things like reading? He immediately said, I learned to read, didn't I? What about writing? That just came later, he shrugged. So Killian is a very mathematically, very, very science-oriented child, which we didn't even, I mean, we kind of knew a little bit, but it wasn't that he was like, oh my God, he's like this mathematician genius. No, he's just really easy for him. And actually that's how he got into the prep school, is because, you know, we had never taught him number, but he figured them out on the spot. They show him the one number from 1 to 100, and then he figured them out. And he figured out how to do things with those numbers. He was 5, you know, and I didn't even know he could do that, right? And he arranged things in patterns, and, you know, he just had that natural ability for math. And to this day, I mean, he does physics. He's in 3rd year of a master's in physics at the University of Edinburgh. And to this day, he says, yeah, I don't really like math. I just can't do it. It's like, well, there's that thing, right? Maybe if you can't do math at that level, maybe you should, you know, darling. But I mean, he's more a poet, you know, he likes the physics. He likes physics because of the problems, because they're interesting to his mind. You know, he likes discussing, you know, that going to lunch with him is a very, very interesting affair, right? But I think it comes from, you know, him not being, because otherwise I think he would be studying economics or something like me. I mean, which he can. I mean, he can do that in his sleep, right? But where does that all come from? I don't know, because he didn't have a formal education, right? How is he doing it? I have no idea. How is he doing that math? He never did math in there. I mean, he did a little bit of math. And then when he went to another school in Australia, we moved to Australia, long story, he went to a Rudolf Steiner school. And so when he arrived there, let's do the reading first. So he, you know, he wasn't really formally taught how to read or anything or write or anything, nothing. I was like, this is a little bit extreme. But anyway.
When did you pull him out of the private school?
He was 7.
7?
Yeah, he was about to enter 1st or 2nd grade. I forgot.
And then he went immediately into this the KPM,
the Sremananda Memorial School. Yes, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. That's one of the things that the 2008 crisis, because that school was had patrons, which got, you know, bankrupted in 2008, so the school went to hell. But anyway, you know, it was good what it lasted, and I definitely recommend. So a lot of the people I advise and work with on my spare time on the weekends are following that approach.
Cool.
Or at least learning from it, and Sugata and Sir Ken Robinson and all that stuff, because it just fucking works, you know. Anyway, so, but it's really weird how it works.
School?
Eh?
Then he went to an Australian school?
He went to a Rudolf Steiner school, which is a Waldorf school.
Oh, yeah.
And that was very interesting because, okay, so when we got to Australia, he was 11. And, you know, he read some comic books and stuff and video games. And, you know, I was starting to get a little bit worried. It was like, oh my God. And so one day there was a tablet hanging around the house, okay, that my husband had gotten as a gift, or it was a reader or something, a Sony reader or something. And nobody had touched that thing. And he picks it up and he says to his father, can I have this? And yeah, okay. And so he gets it and he downloads a book. And it's a 600-page book. It's called Percy Jackson and the Olympians. And so I'm observing him. And for the next, don't know, days, he reads that book. And he says, I really like that book. I'm like, okay, this kid wasn't reading, and now he's reading a 600-page book. Okay, that's interesting. And so he said, can I get another one? I'm like, sure. So press pay, $6, another book, and then another book. And all these books are 400 and 500-page, you know, books about the Greek mythology, which I had been trying to teach him. He didn't want to hear a thing about it because, you know, I'm a writer. I like my Greek mythology. Not interested. Got him books about it. No, fuck no. 11 years old. He reads literally 2,000 pages about it. And I actually read the books myself so I could talk to him about it and see if he really was understanding it. I mean, it looked like he was understanding it. It looked like he was reading, but who knows, right? So I read the book so I could talk about the book with him. And yeah, he was understanding. So, okay, well, I guess that problem is solved. He's reading 600-page books and he has very good reading comprehension. Okay, that had just happened. From 10 years old, he's reading only manga and instructions for games. He read a lot of those. I had to buy those books, those books that are so expensive that tell you how to play Pokemon this and Pokemon that. Oh, another thing this kid did. So he's not going to school. He doesn't know shit, right? Okay, so great. Oh, he's going to that school that they do whatever. And so all of a sudden he gets into Pokemon and he starts collecting the cards and all that. And so I learned Pokemon too, so I could play with him. And I did a lot of that in MJ2. Like we entered his, okay. So that is I think, core of the KPM approach is that you don't ask children to enter your world. Our world is shit. They don't need to enter our world. Fuck that. We enter theirs. Way better. So much better. Such a better world. By and they're so creative and they come up with things and it's magic, everything. Oh, so much better. Why shouldn't they enter our world? Like right now, for example, yuck, right? So we enter his world. But I just did it naturally. I just like it. And so, we would do Pokemon and stuff. So he ends up, and so I follow his lead. Like, okay, so now we go to this. He's obviously, he still plays Dungeons and Dragons. He was semi-finalist. He had to go to Glasgow with the Dungeons and Dragons, D&D. I don't even know what it is, but they have this tournaments and all over the world. But he also then entered the IBM Challenge for business and got semi-finalist in that and went to London. So, he's doing both. He lives in both worlds, no problem. Right? And he was doing this since he was little because nobody had told him, look, you have to do this. You have to get up at 9. You have to do this and this and this and this. Nobody had ever told him that. So he didn't know that, he wasn't supposed to be the finalist of a Pokemon tournament in the region. He was competing with 16-year-olds and he was 10. And so here we are in this tournament and he's with the cards doing whatever. And I'm like, dude, we've been here since 8 o'clock in the morning. It's 2 o'clock at night. It's 2 a.m. And so he finally loses, like in his top 8, right? And then he's like, oh, Mom, I know what I did wrong. I know what I did wrong. It's like, Killian, it's 2 a.m. That kid was 16. You're top 8. We're good. We're good. Let's go home, So it's just such an immersion, right? And they're brilliant, but you don't know how. How did he learn all that stuff? Don't worry. All you have to do is get out of the way. Just give them a few things, not even that many, and get out of the way. Just let them be. It's amazing. So then he goes to the Steiner school, and they put him in special ed. He's never gone to school. So he's 11 years old.
Just because of lack of credentials?
He's never gone to school. He's 11. He has no schooling. Okay, no formal schooling. Except for the year and a half in
was that Steiner school? Did they have?
So the Steiner school had both curriculums, had the regular and the Steiner curriculum. It was a brilliant school, brilliant. It was hardcore. So we get there and I explained to them, we've done this. This is what we've done and this is where we're at. And he went to the school because Killian was dying to go to a school at this point. He was like, I want to go. Like, okay, what about the school? Yeah, perfect, man. Yeah. He was
learn to access to learn or access to social circles. What do you think?
He was just ready. He wanted to go to school, and that's what happens with these children. You let them do what they want, and it gets to a point they're like, oh shit, I better learn how to write. I better learn this. I better learn that. What the fuck? They get like, okay, it's time. And then other children, and then be normal. Everything. But they're ready, right? He was ready to read, and that's when he started reading that before he went to school. And then he goes to the school and it was so tough. The poor thing, he went by himself. Just got on a bus at 11 and went. I was like, oh my God, I was never suffered so much in my life. But he was bullied, everything. And if I had time, there's so much in this, right? He wrote a whole thing about being bullied when he was 11. And the whole gist was that, and he wrote that to get into college. And the whole gist was that, I would have to read that to you. It was so profound. I mean, the way he could understand people, the way he could not be moved. He could not be bullied because his heart was so solid. He was so in touch with himself that he always can see the other person's perspective.
He saw them suffering and cared about them.
He totally turned them around. In 1 year, they were all in his pocket. You know, and then what happened was, so in 1 year, he went from special ed to advanced math in 1 year. In 1 year. So, I mean, I was shitting my pants by then. That's the reason I do these talks, because that was hard. It's like, okay, it was all good. And then it's like, okay, I fucked up. I screwed my child up. He's brilliant. And look what I've done to him. You know, and it's like, no. And then one surprise and more surprise and more surprise that just told me, yes, you were doing the right thing, right? So in 1 year, he was in advanced math, and in writing, he wasn't bad. And then he was doing photography, and in science, he was good. But, you know, he wouldn't do assignments. He wouldn't do, and it's good. There were no grades in the school either, but there was the curriculum. There were both curriculums. So, you know, he wasn't the best student or anything. He wouldn't do shit. He still doesn't. I don't even know still how he passes. Like I said, you realize you're in the third year of a master's in physics in the top 9th in the world, you know, in the University of Edinburgh. You have to work, because he bitches about it. It's like, dude, I don't even know how you're doing this. You fly by the seat of your pants. You know, you understand all this stuff. You need to realize that at some point you're going to have to work. If you work hard, you probably invent the next rocket or something, because, you know, you don't even work hard. He just does it when he's ready. You know, and then he does it. And then they realize they have to do it. They realize they have to study, and they do it. And they manipulate the system. It's beautiful, beautiful to see. You know, I could never do that, because I don't, you know, I would butt against it. He just can kind of go like, and then, you know, he gets people to do things for him. You know, it's brilliant because he's used to it. He's used to those dynamics, right? And having those groups around them that just kind of have that, you know, edge of chaos in which everything is kind of suspended where it needs to be, you know, and everything falls into place. That's how a system really works. It doesn't work in rows. You know, another thing that is amazing is that they're able to, and that's how the classical education was, to be fair, is that they're able to see through, like, have an overview of things. So when they learn something, it's not that they're learning this thing over here and this thing over here, all disconnected. They're able to connect things, and they're like, oh yeah, and this connects to that, and this connects to that. And for example, he's taught himself microeconomics, microeconomics, history, geography, all this because he loves it. And we live in 2021 almost, right? Isn't 2021 yet? I mean, I can't believe I lived this long. I was writing a check. I was like, 2020, 2021. I was like, how did I live this long? You know, I was born in 1961, right? It's like, you know, what the fuck? It's amazing. But that's the marvel of this time. That's the good part, right? We can reach out. I can ask you anything. You can ask me anything. And boom, it's at the edge of our fingers. We didn't have this, you know, but it's good to do it in person too, because there's something about everybody connecting with everybody that is powerful. I mean, super powerful. Anyway, so this stopped, but I think, so where am I? 8:54. Okay, so I'm almost done. Let me share this. I wanted to share one more thing.
Did he then showed interest of wanting to go to college?
No. Hold on. So then he did that, and then we came back to here, and then I think by then he probably should have gone to a regular school, but all his friends who had been educated alternatively were in this Socratic school that my friend had, and it was very alternative as well. And you know, by then it was starting to be clear that Killian was very scientifically oriented, that he probably should go to more technical things, you know, but we didn't worry. We were more worried about him getting his friends back, being socially connected. And so that worked beautifully. He's in a band, plays the bass. I mean, you know, because what happens a lot with these children, you know, is that they become just one thing, and all the other parts of them you know, they're not developed. That's another thing that happens with these children. They developed holistically, like the whole thing develops, not just, yeah, they're better at this. Okay, he's better at math and science. Yeah, for sure. But don't knock off his bass playing ability or his project in the Steiner School, in the Waldorf School, was a book of photography. It was amazing. And the presentation he did, he acted in films, you know, with my friends, and he was good. He was really good actor, you know. So just because nobody told him, oh, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, you're supposed to be better at this or that, we didn't pick sides on him, you know, like, and so he didn't, he's in the present, you know. But then what happened was we also traveled a lot, which is, you know, super important. I don't know what's happening in the world right now, but anyway, so we went to Cambridge. And so we did a trip. We went to Paris, we went to China because MJ was in China doing some amazing work over there. And then we came back and we went to Cambridge because I wanted him to see those schools. I wanted him to see, you know, what university could really be like, you know, because I love going to college, you know, and I love learning. I just love learning. And so does he. And so I took him there, and this really weird thing happened is that he fit there. It was the weirdest thing. I took this picture of him inside of one of the churches at Cambridge. And, you know, he was lanky and has those long hands and stuff. And he fit there. He fit like a glove. I'm like, oh, fuck. And he picked it up too. And he looks at me, he's like, oh, Mom, I totally want to come here. And I'm like, and then he got mad at me. He's like, what did you do? No, I can't come here. I don't have a GPA. I don't have anything, you know? I was like, oh shit. I was like, okay, well, never mind. There's gotta be a way. Let's go to the office and see what they want for you to come here. So we went to the office of admissions at Cambridge University. And, and I said, okay, well, what do you require for my child to come here? Well, first he needs to know what he wants to learn, to study. And I said, do you know? He's like, no, I'm not sure. Maybe economics. And I said, okay, well, there's no rush. And then what else? And so it wasn't that hard. And so it turns out that getting into any college, really, you need certain things. And that's in my materials there. Like, if you go here, hold on. Right here. So this is all the materials we use to get him into college. And that's another of my missions, is to take the stress out of it, right? And because this was stressful. Okay, the whole thing had been so stressful because, like, oh my God, I'm crazy. What am I doing? Searching
and figuring out what he needed.
Figuring out what to do to get him into college with this type of education. So I talked to a few professors, you know, I have a lot of friends professors, and they say, you know what? Some of them told me they actually want children like this. That's what they want. They say they want the other thing, but they don't. They want this. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So I did a book. So first of all, you can do your own school transcript. And then the last 2 years of his education, even when he got out of the other school, he only had a certificate. He didn't have a high diploma. He was not certified, but he did. But so we started doing a book of what he actually had done. And that it was so hard to do. So one thing I would recommend, if you go in this direction, start keeping a diary. Keep everything the child does, write it down. You're not going to direct it, but you can keep record. You can be a record keeper. And when you do that, then you're going to do something like this, and you're going to make a book. And I don't know if they read it, but I think it was important to have it. So you had this homeschool profile, because you're going to that's Gillian, right? So you're gonna take him as a homeschooler. He's not. He's an unschooled or alternatively school. Maybe he's gone to 5 schools. Maybe he's gone to Waldorf. Maybe he's gone to whatever. Maybe you made a school out of, you know, with a group of friends, which is what I recommend. And I have several groups in the Bay Area. They do forest schools, or that's the best, you know, nature. And, you know, so you'll have some, but then you'll attend things, and you'll go to places, and you'll realize that you did so much more than you thought in all these years. Right. And so you collect. And so I started collecting everything that he did, you know, and everything here he did. Right. So it's described here, everything that I'm telling you. Right. And then it's 21 pages, this thing, right? So that's the description, you know, consular evaluation recommendation. So I put down my thoughts, and I don't know if we have time to read it. If anybody's interested, we can read it. And then grading and progress report. So you decided to grade or not grade. He had some grading, some not grading. Because then Cambridge told us they wanted five APs with fives, and they wanted like an insane SAT score. And so Killian got to work. He started studying for APs by himself and with a tutor. So he had a mentor, a tutor, and another tutor. He had two tutors. So he went for it. He got all the AP materials. He went to SAT schools. He had a SAT tutor. He worked his ass off. So this unschooled or alternatively school child took the SAT the first time. He got an 86%. He needed more. The second time, he got a 99% in math. He worked it, and he managed to pass with very good grades for him. The grammar part, he learned grammar on the fly. I mean, seat of his pants, whatever. He did it. So his score was, I think it was almost 15. It was 1400 and something. It was really high with a 99% in math. By himself. And then he took the APs. He didn't get the fives he needed, but he got, the first exam he took was chemistry. It took him a year to prepare that with chemistry. And then he did calculus AB, calculus BC, physics. He did economics on the way to school. He would look at it in the Khan Academy, and he passed that by himself. I don't understand how you can study macroeconomics by himself, but that's what these children do because they're used to it. They're used to figuring everything out, you know, and then when they need help, they get it. They're like, okay, but look, see all the structures that he had, us included, and then, you know, the people that meant something. He went to another starter school in Perth. And then, you know, we broke down everything he had done. He had done a lot. So much more than we thought. Mm-hmm. So much more. Or see, here we start to get where, like, you know, he had this guy. This guy was amazing. This was like an engineering student in Mexico, friend of mine. Killian went to Mexico to study with this guy. Also, he's learning Spanish because he loved studying calculus with him. You know, and so all you really need is the last. Is it 3 years or 4 years? Let me look at the transcript. Hold on. 9, 10, 11, and 12. That's all you need. Forget the other shit. The other shit, you can add it to this, you know, and then look at the shit he was doing, eurythmic, you know, it was amazing, right? All the stuff he was doing. I didn't even realize I had done so much, right?
John Taylor Gatto interviewed administration of a big school and asked them, like, you have a stack of resumes on your desk. Like, what are you really looking for? And he's like, well, these all have 4.0s like on them. So what we're really actually looking for is extracurricular activities. Are they like taking risk? Are they involved in a wide variety of activities? And that's what they use as a distinction of what kind of character this person has and who they want in their school, not the actual like 4.0s.
That's exactly right. And the fact that, you know, I mean, I don't think he got in like first tier, you know, like I think he got in by the seat of his pants in this whole time. But so what? You know, it's like he really understands the subjects. He really can discuss physics with you. He's never lying. He's happy. He does this because he wants to. He chose to do this. This is what he wanted to do. Every of these things he wanted to do, you know. He's learned geography
for college in like just a couple of years. Like once he said he wanted to do it.
Once he said he wanted to do it, to him 2 years.
2 years. Yeah.
So he was 17, I think, when he said, and then so by 19, so he's 22 now, and he's in third year of a master's in physics. And he was so clear on what he wanted. He didn't want to go to an American school. He didn't want to do all this other shit that they do here with the blah blah blah. You know, in Edinburgh, all he does is physics. I mean, he did one course in archaeology, but he does astrophysics, quantum physics and modeling and all he does is physics, and that's what he wanted to do. On this horrible math, he hates the math, but he's doing it, right? And then they have this weird that's a weird, and I help him sometimes with the writing. And oh my God, I was like, okay, I have to make sure I have had a good dinner. And, but he's so good at explaining what he's doing because it's so complicated, like neutrinos and did it. I'm like, oh my God. And then, by the end, I understand it. He totally made me understand the most complex concepts,
To be able to explain it simply. Yeah. So it shows that
super simply. Yeah, and super clearly, and I'm so in awe, And this came from absolute and utter freedom, Like he said, he put it really well. Freedom to learn, not to do whatever you wanted, to learn what you wanted. What else did he say?
Well, most kids, it takes 12 years to get into college, so
I don't know why. It's so not true, right? Yeah. No, it was super interesting that, he I went out on a limb, and then the research I did was showing me this. That I did serious research. I mean, this is not the only book that I read. I mean, I read a bunch of studies, and he has in that book, there's also a bunch of bibliography that you can pull from, and everything was leading in that direction. How children learn. I mean, it's nothing like but now we know because of the Leipzig connection that it's deliberate.
Right. The repetition and the dissociating subjects so that you only know this much of this much and you don't connect it to other things. And
people don't know how to think anymore. And that's the question I asked that woman at the prep school. I said, okay, because I guess my education was actually a true classical education, which, with trivium and, logic and we would learn things like, okay, with the history, with the literature, with the science, everything was connected, everything was studied cross-cut, section, not this over here and that over there, because it is connected. I mean, things connect. And also there is like a beauty of connecting, and there's like an art, of finding. I mean, that's true knowledge, or, true research. I mean, the actual truthful research is fascinating.
Yeah.
Is that we're made it into a joke, but if you're like this, then look, you can tell what's true and what's not. My son is way more conservative than I am by nature. I mean, he's a Virgo. He's very calm. He's very earthy. He's very, but he gets to the same places I get to, because first like, oh, mom, he gets a little bit tired of me because, I'm so out there, and then look what I did with him. But then he can't also send me packing because look what I did with him. So both things are true, right? So, but in the end, he comes to me because he says, the stuff you're saying about the studies is true. Because I told him it's like they're pretending to do the studies, but they're not doing them right. Their parameters are wrong. And I was telling him, and then, so he went and looked at them because he has access to them. And he came to the same conclusion I did. He's like, you're right, Mom. They're doing that. And then he gives me more explanation. Then he just starts telling me my fucking story that I tell always, how they're, screwing us all because with fake stuff, right? But these are people that I guess are, like you said, so they only see what's in front of them, and they can't think properly anymore. People can't think. And the reason they can't think is not their fault, is that they're being educated in a way where they can't think properly anymore. Their logic doesn't work. They don't have overview of things. They can't connect things anymore. They're just
appeal to experts.
They're maimed.
Yeah.
They're actually maimed, and that's what I observed at the beginning when he was 5 and 6. Starting
to go through that process.
Not just in him, but in all the children. because, you know, I'm a photographer, so I took pictures of all these children, and I could see them changing in front of my face. I mean, it was like, this is not the same child. What happened to this child? And don't give me that song and dance that he's 7 now. Fuck that. I mean, I don't believe that. That's just some excuse, you know, for what you're doing to them. So I think it's in front of our noses, you know, and we're just, and it's very scary to do what we did. It's scary. It's because it sounds crazy. It sounds like we're nuts. And, you know, my husband, he's so, again, like my son, like so calm and polite and logical, but he saw it too.
Well, you took a huge risk, right, to go away from the norm, but I can only imagine that you did it out of love, right? You saw something happen
to protect him,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it was pure instinct, and then I was lucky that, you know, I was able to couple the instinct with the research. You know, I know how to research, and that I owe to my nuns, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to open up the Q&A. Adam, Lee, or Lisa, did you have any questions that you wanted to start off with as I bring other people over for Q&A?
Well, Viviane, wow,
Hey.
that was a lot. That was a masterclass as far as I'm concerned for directing our own children's education. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for listening. That's the reason I do it, because if we don't do this, I think we're doomed. I mean, we need this bad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much this is on your radar, but I mean, what are your thoughts about some of the other networks out there that are trying to build schools that have the similar spirit of helping young people direct themselves?
I'm working with a couple of them.
Okay.
So I'm totally open. I'm here. I'm available. I'm willing. I'm chomping to the bed to get this done. I feel so grateful every time a parent listens to this story. You know, and it's not just my story. I mean, there were the other parents that were in that school, and you know, I can bring some other parents. A couple of them have schools right now, or 3 or 4 of them have schools of their own. It's so, I just think it's important. I think if we don't do this, I honestly think we're really close to a brink here. I don't know. I feel it in my bones. I think there's something really ominous about this vaccine. I think there's an attack on the very human ness, you know, our humanity and our hearts. I mean, this is at the core of it, right? What I was saying at the beginning, that the children know the most, especially teenagers. Teenagers know. They still remember. They're pissed as fuck because they still remember what's been taken out of, you know, off of them. And then when you do this type of education, there's no teenage rebellion because there's no need for it. So the teenage rebellion is another myth.
Viviane, I have 1,500 teenagers behind me in my career as a public high school teacher. So
Oh my God.
I've seen a few that really do still have some fire, and I see a lot who have already by 16 years old they're pretty broken as far as freedom and self-direction goes. But I think it's really essential to get as many people as we can thinking as at high a level as possible, and to have them have a depth of self-knowledge that's strong enough to sort of carry them with that self-assurance you talked about through anything. And
yeah, it's I mean, it makes me cry almost, because what I said at the beginning, we betray our children, and we were betrayed too, right? But we betray them, and we were betrayed, and that's where it all begins, isn't it? And so if we can avoid that, then we can have the world we want. Then we can have mature individuals, because I think what happens, our society is full of children, and I think people never grow up, and they never take responsibility for their health, for their lives, because they were betrayed, and they're still a child. They never had time to be a child.
Absolutely.
And they're still looking for mommy and daddy, right? And And that's what the parties are, and
In that vein, I mean, do you have any thoughts about like initiation, sort of? I mean, rites of passage and those sorts of things. Especially for the young men that we're raising, or
oh,
not
that's
really
that's
factored
a
into
very
what?
different subject. I would love to talk about.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I see that as part of, like there's so many things to learn about the outer world, but like you said,
Well,
that calm
absolutely.
confidence and that solid knowing who you are and being present in the world, that doesn't come from study of any book or any Khan Academy or anything like that.
Well,
and I should know because I've read plenty of books.
There is a lot to. Okay, yeah, I'm glad you bring that aspect of that, which I have so much to cover that it's hard for me to talk about everything. But one of the aspects that was very interesting about the Steiner school, the Waldorf school, I don't know if you know about Rudolf Steiner, but to me, he was the opposite. And he's vilified, of course, but to me, he was the warrior of, the opposite of what we have, right? So he was, so he, for example, one of the things they did is they took the children and they literally dropped them in the wilderness with a tent and a backpack and no electronics, nothing. And the first time Killian did that, or the second time, I don't know, but one of the times he did it. So they were a week gone. So he comes back and he's like filthy. They've been camping and his energy is completely different. I mean, he's a different person. I mean, it was so impacting to see what a week all they had was like a field radio, satellite. That's it. They had one in case something happened. That was it. That was the only connection to the world. They were, at the Blue Mountains. I don't know where in Australia, and Australians are really big into nature. They're kind of out there. They're a bit crazy,
Australian nature is also it's pretty deadly as far as
Yeah, and there's
more stuff that will kill you.
There's all that shit that will kill you. Of course, there's in Texas too. I just got 10 acres, and I'm sure it's full of rattlesnakes. I just picked up a snake skin out of a tree, So, but cool. That is, and they did the May rituals, and they did all that, and if you want to read a very good book about initiation, there's a book called of Water and Fire. Of Water and Spirit. Sorry, of Water and Spirit by Malidoma Somé, Some. And he was, a son and grandson of shamans in Burkina Faso in Africa. And he was kidnapped by these Jesuits. See these Jesuits that keep popping up? So they kidnapped him and raised him. And then when he was 16, he left and escaped, escaped and went back to his village. And, the elders were saying, you would have been, you would have been initiated and all this and all that, but we don't think you should do it because it's going to kill you. You just, you've been gone too long, but we're not going to tell you what to do. So you would decide. And he decided to do it, and he didn't die. And he actually describes what he can describe about the initiation rituals. And I actually had an experience when I lived in California. It's very involved, okay, but it was sort of an initiation, and and he describes the exact same thing, except the color was different in the book. And I was so amazed that he had been able to describe it, because I'm a writer and I've never written about that yet. Anyway, I might one day, but I have not been able to. And, so I contacted him, anyway, it's a long story. I ended up meeting him and everything. But I said, how did you manage to write that? Because, and he's like, oh, honey, I didn't write it. you know. And he also said about how he because he has several PhDs, and he says, just like I didn't do all those PhDs. There's more, right? There's a field of there's an universal mind that you can tap on. I mean, there are other ways, and Tesla talked about that, of connecting with those rivers of information or rivers of knowledge, which are interplanetary even. There's all these abilities that we have, and see, I think that the point of this whole plot against us is not just because they're evil and mean and they want to suck our energy, which they do, but I think also it's because we are so powerful that if we realize it, they're out of here in like 5 minutes. And I kind of know how to do it. I mean, it doesn't take much, and it doesn't take violence or anything like that. It just takes, what we're doing here is that we focus on our hearts and then take the energy away from them and disconnect with them and say, I'm human and I'm this person. And, you say your name, and you are you and your unique diamond, your unique light, your unique, brilliance. And then all that other shit has no place. It disappears because there's no place for it. The only reason this shit's here is because we made the space for it. We bought into it. We have like this garment on top of us, this distortion, this kind of a grid that is not ours, and it's overimposed onto ours, and we're diminished and we're maimed, and we're the vaccines are doing that, the water is doing that, the food is doing that, the TV is doing that, the schools are doing that, right? All of that. But we can come out of it. I am convinced that we can, unless they start fucking with our DNA again, which it's about to happen.
I can't argue with that. I can't. I
hope I'm wrong.
What's going on? I would way prefer you're wrong on that one too.
Me too, but it doesn't look like it, because they're kind of telling you were gonna put RNA in the nucleus of your cells, so we give instructions to your cells so we can diminish the symptoms, because that's the criteria in the studies that they're showing of how this vaccine works, is that the criteria is that, we're going to diminish the symptoms. It's like, you're kidding, right?
I'm not thrilled with the track record of vaccines as a whole. So
there's that, and there is that, but this is a whole different. They've been trying to do this vaccine for 17 years, right?
I teach. Yes, I've taught all the high school sciences. I know about RNA and protein synthesis and a little bit about the immune system. So yeah, I know enough to be concerned that this is a different attack on the immune system than just a polio shot.
It's
or
not
a tetanus
just
shot.
Immune system. It's actually, they've never done this. This is a first. No other vaccine works like that. There's no other. So what they've done is a genetically modified RNA instruction. So they've basically created a virus. And encased it into a protein. This is a GMO.
Oh, totally.
Created. Absolutely. They've never done this, and then they encase it. It's kind of fascinating, really. And then it's going to go into your cells, and they say, "Oh no, but it's not going to go into the nucleus." Bullshit! If you read the study, it's going into the nucleus. No,
that's right where RNA goes. NA stands for nucleic acid. That's where it belongs.
Yeah, I remember, but in Espanol, I don't know, nucleic acid. It goes into the cell. Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere and doesn't do shit. I don't know what they're thinking, and people are like waiting for this.
They can't wait, man. They cannot wait. Not here up in Connecticut. Same thing. Everyone wants to.
But the thing I don't understand is that I don't think people really trust the government. I think people are really afraid of the government, and I think they don't really trust this because I had these long discussions, with friends of mine who are professors, and they're smart and everything, and they don't talk to me anymore. And, so they unfriend me, and I said, okay, so I said that these criminal organizations, FDA and the CDC and the EPA, I affirm that they're criminal organizations. Would you allow me to prove it to you? Okay. All right. So I said, well, I'll send you an email every day, just a little bit because it's a lot. So I'll send you an email a day with proof. Okay. So I do that. And so after, 10 emails or whatever, he's crying uncle, right? And so he calls me and writes me, I forgot. This was a good friend of mine, and I adore him. He's a genius. He's an amazing filmmaker. And he says, well, Viviane, I agree with you. You're right. I say, okay, well, so friend me because, you unfriend me because I said that the FDA and EPA and the CDC are criminal organizations, and I proved it to you. I say, yeah. He says to me, this is the part that's interesting. He says, well, I did a documentary about the old companies and this and that, so I know. Okay, so what are we doing here exactly? Because now we have to trust these people, and you're telling me, and then it becomes this political thing, right? And then all he had to offer was like, well, I think we are kind of like in different worlds right now, which is totally true.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening, because living in this world right now that you and all of you are, and me, we are right now, it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's annoying and it's scary and it's all of that. And, some days I find myself saying, well, couldn't it be true that maybe like, no, Viviane, no, it's not true. I still, want it to be true that they're nice and they're good people and they want to do what's best for us. But the proof is in the pudding. There's no way.
You get one asshole on top of a pyramid of 1,000 people with good intention, and that's all you need. They can just do whatever they want, and they can steer it however they want. But
it's pretty amazing.
Thank you very much for the conversation. I'm going to back up and let somebody else have a turn. But
thank you
I look
so
forward
much
to seeing you
for being here. Yeah, me too. I would love to hear more about those 1,500 teenagers. Jesus, I mean, my hat goes to you.
Anybody else have a question for Viviane?
Yes.
Hi, Lee.
Hey, Viviane. Well done. That was a wonderful presentation. I loved it.
Thank you.
I loved it.
You.
And thank you so much for letting us have some insight into the journey of your son and your family as well, because I think that was really important to show how it changed and things changed and the needs of your son, as his anatomical development, his human development, natural human development, he had different needs and different interests, right? And went in different directions. Is that not so?
Yeah, I mean, it surprises me every day. I think he surprises himself, I mean, it's very interesting, what happens when you're allowed to be yourself,
Yes. Now, with all your experiences, if you could map out or suggest a best case scenario, the age for children to start to move out. Okay, of course, they will choose for themselves. I want to go and make some friends. I want to get out of the home, let's say. How would you map that out for someone who, like myself, who wants to create the best potential learning space possible?
So you mean at what age they should start this?
To move out?
That's one thing. The beginning age would be good for some individuals, but also, that's free school, right? I would like to build or have something of that nature.
Yeah, I think the secret is, okay, so about age, I think it should be the whole time. I don't think that anybody, kids I think are able to go in and out, and, if they've had a taste, a really good taste of this freedom, of this ability to be themselves and to follow their bliss and, all that. And this other way of being either unschooled or alternatively schooled or with things offered. I think if they decide to go to school at some point, they're able to go to a normal school and get a lot out of it. But ideally, we would reinvent the way we educate our children completely. And in my experience, what made that possible is the parents. So what I'm observing is that, out of need, just because parents have, children that are a little bit different, or people like me that observed it, or the woman that started the school that saw this other thing and she liked it so much that she asked permission to start one, because it was kind of like an Indian guru or whatever, but I mean, that was not in the equation at all, right? But they helped her, like, okay, so here's our materials, here's, we'll train your teachers in our schools, because it's a completely way of thinking. But I think the parents are the heroes here, because it took a lot. I was not the only parent, obviously. There were many, and I have so much respect for each one of these people. I mean, wow, like it took cojones, and they all had them, and they paid a lot of money for this school, and they did a lot of volunteering, and they were extremely involved, and they were the ones that did it. So if you want a successful school like this, it's gonna be about the parents, and then of course the children. But the parents are the ones that are going to make it possible, and even mentors. And because doing a school like this is expensive. The reason it's expensive is because there's a lot of attention to the child if the child wants it, and there's a lot of one-on-one, and there's a lot of focus and care, and so one teacher for 40 students, that doesn't work, right? And so the involvement of the community is very important, because each parent can do, the parents, enter as teachers, but it's very important that they enter the world of the children. I mean, I cannot stress enough how important it is to be child-centered. And another type of school that works pretty well, that is a similar, maybe not as spiritual, but very similar, are the Sudbury schools, which my friend Melissa, she runs a Sudbury school. Those schools are run by the children. Well, actually, they're run by everybody, the parents, the children, and the teachers. It's kind of like a democratic, so they decide amongst themselves. To me, that's a little bit too much politics. I like the control, the edge of chaos. I think the chaos is a very good way to teach your children. It's the opposite of what we're taught. And I think the Sugata Mitra methods and the KPM approach, or the simply unschool and just let the children, pose problems to them or not, or just follow their lead, say, see what problems they want to work on, and that kind of thing. The fact of being together in nature, following their bliss, and the stuff being offered and available, and then they coming in and out of it. That kind of weird chaos, that's what does it, and so that is creating that environment is what's difficult. It's creating, there's trees, and there's chickens, and there's a little bit of a paradise created, and beauty and care. Like the Steiner schools, the Waldorf schools are good models as well. They have very interesting, and then the way they start the academics, they're interesting too, in that they do the main lesson, and they do also sacred geometry, and they have a lot of curriculum that is uniquely Steiner, that a lot of it I find very interesting as well. So I mean, you don't have to do just one style. You can just grab one thing and another and offer it. And maybe that's not what the children want to do. You ultimately are going to, have to, let them lead, because it's their freaking life. And we don't know what the future is going to be like. They know. They're the ones who are going to live it. And, not trusting them is a mistake.
So that Sri school, what was the inside of you showed us some pictures of what was going on and how they were interacting through the photographs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the schools, they have, donated, the people donate, here they are, people donate, this was a mansion. It was amazing. I mean, it was just so lucky. Let's see if I have them somewhere. Hold on. No, in Safari it won't work. Let me go on Chrome. I'm not sharing my screen. I'll share my screen here in 1 second. Hold on. Yeah, I was lucky, but if you create you will find it eventually, if you look for it. It's like you have to set the intent with the parents that, you know, we're going to find a space in which we can go in and you know, and create this environment in which the children can explore, you know, themselves and the world. And, you know, like, it's not classrooms. Like Sugata Mitra has a system where, you know, there's places to sit, places to gather, the computers offered, things are offered.
Right.
And there's a garden, and that I'm adding because, you know, we always had a garden, and we always had animals, and, you know, and so you're learning in their kitchen and they're cooking, and don't be afraid to give them knives. That's another thing that the Steiner School was doing. They were doing always crafts, like things that are useful, like leather work and woodwork. And, you know, that was a big part of the curriculum, you know, to create things. That's another thing that they don't teach us for some reason anymore, to survive, like to cook and to know where food comes from, and to make things, you know, to make your own clothes, to make your own tools, and, you know, to your furniture. I mean, it's just creative, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I took a lot of notes. I took 3 pages of notes, and I gained a lot from this. I appreciate it. Thank you, Joshua Hale, for saying this.
Go in the server. All the stuff
awesome.
is in there too. Like you know, the server, if you download all the materials, it's all there for you. You know, it's just so.
Thank you for that. That's a great gift. Thank you. And I'm definitely going to check out Sugata's work.
Yes, he is so cute too. You'll love him. It's just he's so hard. I'm going to share this. Hold on. I just wanted to show you the environment. No, it's not this one. These are the kids from the school. But that was the school right there. It had been a mansion. It's beautiful. It was amazing. Look at this place. Now it's a hotel. Somebody bought it, and then it became a school, like a Catholic school. And this is how, you know, that we did a lot of this too. You know, they always have bands, they always did music because they wanted to, and they were good. Not that it mattered, right? But yeah, it's so much fun you can have, you know. It doesn't have to be like boring either at all.
Can't imagine what my life would be like without public school.
If you hadn't gone to a boring, disgusting school.
Yeah, that tried to break me.
That's right. I mean, it makes you so angry too. It's just, I mean, I'm a very angry person. I think I have righteous anger, but my whole life I've been angry, you know, because they piss me off, you know, it really pissed me off. And I tried to do things, and sometimes it would help me. Like I tried to put plays, but I don't know. The environment was just so constrictive and so judgy and so, you know, I don't know. And now they have another type of judgy. Now is this, oh gosh, I don't even know. I don't know.
Well, Viviane, thank you so much for spending this time with us and making all these resources available just to be able to help out with parents to bridge that gap into going into higher education if they want to, if the kids want to. You obviously spent a lot of time and energy into carving that path in order to be able to do that yourself, and to be able to just make those resources available is really, really valuable.
Yeah, and a lot of people helped me too, so I'm just passing it along. Like a lot of the parents, like when Killian decided to go to school, I reached out to some of the parents, like Killian's old girlfriend. You know, they did a different route. They started going to community college very early, like at 14. And that's another path because they do really well.
Choose.
Yeah, like that's another way to do it. Like she had gone to, community college, super easy to go there instead of high school. Just go directly to college. And these kids are really, I mean, but this is not because these kids are brilliant. It's like, oh, kids are brilliant at something. I mean, maybe not, you know, they're just brilliant. They're born brilliant. These vaccines are really fucking them up, by the way. You can tell. I mean, you can start telling that people's, they droop. You can. I go into a coffee shop the other day, and I went to this table and I said, "Your children are not vaccinated, are they?" And they're like, "No, how did you know?" It's like, I can totally tell. It's crazy. And then this other poor guy comes in, lawyer type, with his kid hanging from his chest and facing forward, totally out of it. Same age, completely out of it.
Medals.
Viviane, I'm going to call my school CYA, Choose Your Adventure.
Choose your CYA, yeah. So, yeah, start reaching out to parents, man.
All right. Well, how can people reach you? Do you and how?
So I just would give them the Discord invite. How does this even work? Let me get it.
Okay. I can add it to the bottom of this video when we post it.
Yeah. So I'll just make one that doesn't expire. And
shoot it over to me.
Exactly. Never. I got it. So where do I put it? In the chat around here somewhere?
You can do a direct message to me.
Okay, I'll just send it to you on Discord too.
And then if people need consulting or any extra help,
they can just contact me through the server.
Great.
And I mean, anytime, guys. I mean, seriously, it's like the more we are, the better chances we're gonna have. And it really is. If you want to change the world, you have to start with education. I mean, that was the motto at KPM, and they were absolutely right.
Yep. And the more of us that are critical thinkers, the better chance that we got around us, right?
Yeah. But you're not going to be critical thinkers if you don't leave them alone.
Yeah.
And you start like telling them what to do. Wait, I sent it to the wrong guy. Sorry, wrong chat.
Well, my 2-year-old, thanks you for sharing your story. I know she's going to be benefiting from this. She's already off to a great start, and it's just really amazing to see her continue to blossom. And I've never broken that trust, right? Like I've always been there for her. And so, yeah, it's just really precious to be able to have that connection and not just kick her off.
She already knows. She already knows who she is. She already knows. All she has to do is not forget. That's it.
Nice.
And then if she has you, and you don't have to do much. You really just have to get out of the way. Like one of the things that I really love about Sugata Mitra is that he says, "Don't make it too easy. Make it hard." It's funny. It works better. It works better if it's not everything. No. Just really difficult problem. Not make it easy. Get out of the way and have grandma. I love it.
Check him out.
Yeah, it's magic.
Okay, Viviane. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Look
so
forward to
excited
future
to be here. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.